Hey everybody, this is Eric Enge. I am the CEO of Stone Temple Consulting. I'm on the road today. Unfortunately, I don't have my nice webcam working, so I'm on my regular PC webcam, so my apologies for that. But this is the Digital Marketing Answer Show. We're going to talk about Panda-monium today. If you get the Panda blues, then we're going to try to help you think about it at least a little bit better. I have a fantastic panel with me today, and this is one of the things that Mark and I are changing with the DMA show. Is we're going to be going more into bringing in great panels of people, and we've got some folks on the show with us who claim they know a lot about Panda. Therefore, it's probably true. Sorry, and with that, we've got Bill Slawski, David Harry, and my co-host, Mark Traphagen. You guys want to all do your brief self-intro, and then we'll get rolling. Bill?
All right. Thank you, Eric and Mark. My name is Bill Slawski. I'm the Director of Search Marketing for GoFish Digital, and I write about patents and white papers and search engines at SEObythesea.com.
Awesome. David?
Yeah, Dave, a.k.a. the Gypsy, SEO Training Dojo, as it says there, which is a community full of search geeks we've had for about 5 years now, and I do a lot of forensic work, I guess, over the last few years and things of that nature, which keeps me in tune with it, and I also just follow Bill around writing about patents and papers.
That's a good thing to do. And my co-host, Mark.
Hey, I'm Mark Traphagen, Senior Director of Online Marketing here at Stone Temple Consulting, and holding down the branding fort today with my backdrop that I'm very disappointed to see that Eric did not bring with him on the plane all the way to California.
Yeah, it was a little awkward. They wouldn't let me take it into the as a carry-on.
See, Eric, with my partner Terry, I would have turned that around back on him and said I was a little disappointed to see that you hadn't had it mailed here before I got here.
Yeah, there you go.
Come on, turn it around on him, man.
That's it. Yes. Excellent. So, guys, we're going to talk about Panda today. And it first came out February 23rd, February 24th, 2011, depending on who you ask. But that's long enough ago that we don't have to worry about the 24-hour difference. And love to start with talking about just, what it is. And by what it is, I mean a little bit about what it is from what it does point of view. So, one of the things that I know that they said in one of the very first announcements about it was that it was a document classifier, for example. So I'd like to talk about these kinds of things about the algorithm, and let's see where the conversation goes.
Sure, I'm sure Bill will get all geeky with it in a moment. So I think one of the most common things that I wouldn't mind getting out of the way is that, yeah, a lot of people, you know, when I tell them it's a dampener or and potentially from some of the stuff Bill's looked at, a boosting and a dampening effect. Some sites get boosted, some get dampened. But it's an algorithmic effect as opposed to a penalty. And so many people like to call it a penalty. I got penalized by Panda or this and that. And it's not really that. Penalties are manual actions. And I think a lot of people don't actually know is that Panda has a big brother or sister that is actually a manual action for thin content or something that will get stepped up from there, which is a pure spam manual penalty. Everyone's used to unnatural links manual penalties, but there is an actual manual penalty for thin content, which can graduate to a pure spam, which means you've got thin content, you've been scraping, you've been doing bad links, you've been doing everything. And I think a lot of times people need to understand in their head it's not a penalty. Google isn't penalized. They're not out to get you. And this isn't something like a reconsideration request via recourse. It's something you have to improve to satisfy the algorithm along the way. So.
I think that's a great point. I mean, people do want to call these things penalties, and from Google's perspective, these algorithms that they run are just algorithms. It's a ranking factor.
And maybe, David, before we go to Bill, maybe could you cover what are the, at the 50,000-foot level, what are the main things that Panda is designed to look at on a given site or evaluate?
It's like any other ranking factor. We don't know, so anybody definitively talking about it is probably crazy. But I went back actually this morning and reread all the early public statements from 2011 and stuff like that, trying to, pick up pieces. And, they kept saying over and over, it's search quality, we're trying to surface better quality results. So at the top-down level, you can look at that. Some things we've seen over the years is like advertising in the various contextual spaces, obviously scraping content, like one of Danny's early ones when he was calling it the farmer algorithm, before it actually had the name Panda. Even he was talking about content farms and scraping and things of that nature. About a month before the first Panda came out, Google actually had talked about an algorithm update they'd done for basically scraped content and things of that nature, and I guess attribution probably tied in there as well. So, we do have hints to understand that above-the-fold content can be important as far as ad placements being in places they shouldn't, user experience-wise. You can intimate scraped content and things of that nature, or thin content, like, the old days of answer, you put in how do I do this and that, and some sites that we all knew back then would rank for every term because they'd answer that question 4 times with 4 different pages about the same topic. So, and if you read the description they have for the thin content manual penalty, same kind of stuff. Does it have a value add, or is it just merely content for the sake of content?
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, you want to weigh in a little bit on some of the things that we've heard about Panda from your perspective, including various related patents?
Sure. Okay, so officially, there really aren't any patents that we can say with any certainty are Panda, but from the Wired interview that Matt Cutts and Amit Singhal did with on the topic of Panda, they told us that one of the people who provided a breakthrough in how the algorithm behind Panda works was named Panda, and then named the update the Big Panda algorithm. I did some research to see who people at Google named Panda might be, and found about 5 of them, including at least one actual janitor. But a couple of them were search engineers, and for a while I thought that there was one in specific, Viswanath Panda, and I was wrong. A guy named Navneet Panda actually took credit for the Panda update on his Google Plus page in the bragging rights section. And from the white papers that he had written for Google, it's not hard to believe. A lot of the past research that he had done involved machine learning and how a search engine might be able to understand what's on a page based upon the features that appear on that page. So it's not hard to believe was at least part of the impetus behind the upgrade. He was involved. Patent did come out with his name on it, which describes a method of re-ranking search results. And I said re-ranking in that pages are already ranked based upon things like relevance, one of the types, many different types of relevance. And
wouldn't that make sense with the way it rolls out and refreshes as opposed to being incorporated?
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, basically it's a post-processing kind of thing, right? You've already done your ranking, and then you essentially, after the fact, make adjustments.
Yeah, you boost results, you demote results based upon, in this case, a quality score. So, right. So document classifier takes a look at a page or a group of pages. In this case, it's not individual pages, but it's rather pages that are grouped together, maybe by sharing a subdomain, maybe by being about a specific topic, in a subdirectory, but these can be groups of pages rather than an individual page. So this patent, we can't tell for certain if it's the one behind Panda. It doesn't have the 23 questions that Amit Singhal showed us in a official Google blog post. He wrote about how to write high-quality content.
Yeah, I read through that one today, and there's a good, actually, there was a point in there I meant to bring up too. What he had said in there too, or at least I think it was the one you're referring to, so I think I got to it from your site, but is that a section of your site that is hit by Panda can affect the entire site, meaning the rankings and traffic. So that's a good distinction. Bill, I also reread your Panda posts this morning, and you tied in some link stuff in there, and I don't think anyone's ever done that before. Could you know?
I think that confused a lot of people. People who read it initially said, this can't be Panda, it's got to be Penguin, it's about links. It's like, but look at how they're using the links.
Right, it's not a page rank way, it was more of a classification way, right?
Right, they're not, they are analyzing those links, but they're not saying this is a spam link, this is a whatever link. We're looking at all the anchor text in these links, and we're classifying the document being pointed to on the basis of these outside things. Instead, what they did was they tried to gauge the quality of the pages by the numbers of links. It's like if somebody mentions root linking domains from Moz.com, and what they say about those is we don't care so much about the quality of those. We want numbers. The more home pages from different domains that link to you, the better. And to a degree, that's what Google's saying with this. We're looking at independent links, is their phrase for it. And an independent link can be an actual, real, explicit link,
or a citation, like we were talking about before the show. Right.
You know, and there were a couple people who wrote articles about the patent after I wrote mine, where they said that there was some type of ratio between the implied links and the express links. They misread the patent.
I know the one you're talking about. I think you misread your post. I don't even think you read the patent. But.
Well,
so let's back up. We get a couple of things that we're clear on here, but I want to just draw it out a little bit and make sure that the audience is fully up to speed with what we're saying. First of all, one aspect of Panda is this notion that it's a document classifier. So what that means is that it's a separate algorithm that goes out and tries to use a variety of metrics to assess the quality of a document. And you could imagine a way of doing that is you could take the 25 questions that Amit Singhal shared in his post.
Or you could dig up one of those Google Radar documents that have they're miles long.
That's right. And what you could do is have a bunch of people review a whole set of sites that they know that are really solid quality, a whole set of sites that are really bad quality, and start picking some factors which might allow you to more broadly classify all documents.
Or even better, if you had those people handy, you could literally get them to look at the top 5 in your search space and query space and tell you what they like about it, and then compare it to yours. You know, literally, if you want to go to that route. But
sure, but of course, you know, building a document classifier, what you're trying to do is identify some characteristics that are in common with good documents and characteristics that are in common with bad documents, and then apply that to the entire web.
Right, it becomes a seed set. Those become your seed sets that you work from.
That's right.
And that's very common in many other forms of ranking and whatever.
So the first thing we know then is if you've been hit by Panda, you have some set of those factors that are in common with the bad documents, That's just a fact. That's basically what that means. Now, that's not necessarily enough to help you go fix it yet, but in terms of thinking about the way this works, that's an important concept for everybody to get. It doesn't mean that you have a bad site. It means that you have some characteristics that Google has determined are in common with bad sites. And that's one of the things that's so hard for people to get, because when they lose traffic from Panda or Penguin or Penalty, whatever, well, Penalty is a different thing, but from an algorithm, they think that it's about their site, and it really isn't, right? Google is implementing some algorithm in some broad way that applies to the entire web, and they've tested it to a certain degree to see that when they have that algorithm in play, that their search results appear to improve in quality in aggregate. You might have the best site on some given topic, and you get whacked, and you go, well, how could this be? You know, they can actually individually look at your site, right? And then the second thing that we said that I think was really important is the re-ranking aspect. And that's the reason why Panda runs the way it does. So it comes out and it rolls out over some period of days, but it isn't continually baked into the algorithm like most other ranking factors, right? So that's why you tend to get it in bursts. Is that a fair summary, guys?
Oh, yeah, certainly. And again, you know, I think when people try to do the forensic work, they might say, well, you know, why the last one I was fine on, this one I got hit, but I really haven't changed my site. What happened? Again, it's, as we've been discussing, Google's modified her to this and that. Like, they stopped talking about Panda for, I don't know, 6-8 months. You know what I mean? It was just incorporated in. They wouldn't make any public statements. And then Matt comes out and says, well, this is 4.0. Well, why is that? You know, again, we don't have actual statements from Google, but my feeling is that it was a bit of a rewrite, that it was a rollout as opposed to a refresh this time. So if you got hit this time, but you weren't hit last time and you didn't change your site, it's Google that's adapting their algorithms as opposed to something you've done since then. You know, there's always options in that area. So.
Yeah, I want to stress regarding re-ranking. That's something that happens frequently. It's very common. Google may say at some point, we want to surface more mobile-friendly websites. Let's classify pages based upon how mobile-friendly they are, and then let's rank.
Or even query classifications. Like last year before Hummingbird came out, we started seeing in quasi-generalized query spaces more informational being inserted in. So they'd obviously changed it to surface more informational results as opposed to the transactional. So yeah, definitely.
Right. Our accessibility. For a while, Google offered a version of Google that surfaced accessible websites higher. It promoted those and demoted pages that weren't as accessibility friendly. So you know, there are a lot of different ways, a lot of patents about re-ranking results. There were a few about phrase-based indexing, and chances are really good that's baked into the algorithm at this point.
You think? It's the ultimate multi-purpose set, man. That thing did everything, you know what I mean?
It
dealt with spam, it dealt with everything. That'd be Anna Patterson, folks. Go look it up. It's some history you should know.
After she and her husband launched Cool,
yeah,
she was back at Google 2 weeks later.
That worked good for you.
It was a widespread search at that point, so yeah.
So yeah, but in the case of Panda, what makes it interesting is, and I'm sure they use this in other ways too, it's a post-processing form of re-ranking, right? So,
yeah, and a lot of even the baked-in ones that he's talking about, Eric, are like that as well. Meaning, there is this beginning set that it starts with, and then it runs this one, and then this one, and this one, and so on.
Right.
It could be query dependent. It could be classification dependent. It could be social dependent. Because what is social? You know, the stuff that's showing up in your results is run at the time as well. So if you're logged into Google, it's re-ranking your results. It's the same kind of, a lot of it's baked in, and that's very common. There's like this core starting point that all these other layers of the onion pile on top of.
So with Panda 4.0, you mentioned this, David. I think Google hadn't actually made any statements about any Panda since July of 2013, if I remember right. And suddenly they call this Panda 4.0, which I agree implies that it was a rewrite of the platform. And now I'm going to actually share a theory with you. I'm going to suggest that it may be that this rewrite of the Panda platform was only possible because of the Hummingbird rewrite of the search platform. I have no proof of any kind of that, but so it's just speculation.
Yeah.
Clear with everybody, but one of the things they said that when they released Hummingbird, we don't have to go into a whole deep Hummingbird conversation, but that they did this to allow them to be more nimble and be able to do more things with other kinds of algorithms.
I might agree in the sense that, like, you look at like Yahoo Answers or eHow or someone along that line. They literally could keyword target phrase after phrase, how to build an oven, how I would build an oven, how you should build an oven, etc., etc. And they would pump out pages again and again to answer all these questions, and those would literally work because of some of the exact matching elements. So I guess in a sense, but you know, what I seem to get from Hummingbird is more of a natural language processing thing that I think is really leaning towards voice search, because you know, I'm sure every search engine on the planet knows this is where it's going to end up. That people won't be typing in there in 5 years; they'll be talking into their phones. So, or you know, talking to a computer, whatever. So I think to a degree, sure, that you could intimate that. Do I think it was actually something to do with anything quality related, as much as it is natural language processing and understanding that this question is the same as that question? So let's just show the mixed results for that, you know, based on the two as opposed to breaking them up. You know, I get more of that sense from it. I've heard every theory from this point from, you know, because there was the, let's see, we had Panda, we had the payday loan update. There was some stuff going on with snippets and the social world that Mark was talking about. So I heard theories that there was something going on in the old, that it was a smoke screen and something underneath was going on because people were seeing movement that was neither related to it. Yeah, it's the old Mac cuts in the Mac thing, but you know, I've seen that. And so you got to think in those terms, since you're talking almost infrastructure, Eric, that 06 was Big Daddy, 2010 was Caffeine. So we're literally right on mark for another infrastructure update as well. Is something like that going on that we don't know about? Who knows? That's what keeps this job interesting.
Sure. Well, the reality, and first of all, I understood Hummingbird to be the platform update. They described it as a rewrite of the search platform and the natural language piece.
Yeah, well Caffeine was like parallel indexing and stuff. You know, Caffeine was parallel indexing in hardcore infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if, you know, Hummingbird fits that. I think possibly.
Yeah. So yeah, let's not get down the Hummingbird track too deeply. Let's stay on Panda, and we can have that debate another time. But so with Panda 4.0, first of all, there seemed to be a lot of partial recoveries reported where people. And I certainly saw a few of these, and then we had some full recoveries, and then a whole mess of new people hit. So there seemed to be multiple things in play. One of the things that I heard people talk about, or what Google talked about early on, was that this would be a kinder, softer, gentler Panda, which to me, when I see these partial recoveries, makes me think that they were sort of asserting that that they had turned up the dial on how badly the penalty affected you. Maybe they turned it back a little bit, and that's why we saw some of these partial recoveries.
You know, and I'd like to just warn people over the last couple of weeks what you were touching on, Eric, which was so many things were happening. It's almost a forensic nightmare. You know, people have been coming to me as somebody who does forensics, and I'm going, well, I don't know. If Penguin had rolled out last weekend, I would have just jumped off something tall, you know, because it was just getting weird. You can't make that assumption. Like, everyone went running around that eBay got hit by Panda, this and that. For all you know, they got a manual penalty that week as well. You got to be careful addressing issues you're having in times like these, because so many things went out in the last couple of weeks that Don't make assumptions. It's the old Sherlock Holmes thing. Once you eliminate everything possible, what you're left with must be the truth. So.
Yeah, I think I've seen references from people from Google about the impacts of updates on search results, and they say sometimes when we upgrade Google, it's like we're at 500 feet in a plane going really fast, and we're tinkering with the engine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, right. It's a pretty subtle. Subtle is the wrong word. It's a daunting thing to contemplate doing. That's a better way to put it.
Right.
So,
right.
And from the user standpoint, it's kind of the old saw about the blind people encountering an elephant. Your site, you might get whacked by the tail of the elephant, and say, well, the elephant is like a snake, and that you need to watch out for snake-like characteristics. It's like, but the guy next to you is getting actually stomped by a giant foot. So it's what part of the elephant are you touching at any given moment? You don't know. It's a lot bigger elephant than anyone is seeing. We had somebody in the comments in the chat here earlier say, I got hit significantly by Panda. Can you look at my site? And Dave very nicely volunteered to go take a look at his site afterward. But David, I'd be curious to hear your comment on that. Like looking at somebody, can you tell somebody's been hit by Panda or likely to hit by Panda just by looking at the site?
You ultimately, in any forensic situation, again, it's that old Sherlock Holmes, what remains must be the truth. So one of the first things you do in forensic is pull back the timeline, and then you line up your dates and so on. There's actually a tool out there. I'll find it and put it in the event page after.
And by
that puts all the dates of Panda, Penguin, every other update that came along. And so you start to look for other things that might have happened in the past, hints of things that were coming or moving up and down. Again, what's the situation? Did you change your site since the last Panda? Hey, have you been hit before that you didn't notice? And one of the weirdest things that we get in forensic is you ask people for developer logs. What's your develop? Did they update MySQL? Have they changed the PHP INI? Without that information, it's often impossible to truly tell because so many things are going on in a query space at any given time. Now, what did you go down on? Did you go down on certain terms? Was it certain parts of your site? Was it certain types of terms, classification-wise, informational, transactional? And so you literally have to start eliminating one thing after another. And if you find yourself with that at the end, then that's where you start to address it. And even at that point, until you start to play with it, wait another month for the next Panda to roll out and see if it has effect. And in isolation, meaning don't do a whole bunch of crazy things at once, you can't truly know. It's more just an experienced, guess. And
that's
reduces what I do for a living, really minimalizes it, but it's true.
That's an important point what you just said at the end there that many people don't realize about many of these algorithm updates. So we're talking about here, we're not talking about a penalty, is that you have to wait until the next refresh or update to it to see any change, even if you make corrections. It's not like instant, not if I correct whatever I think might be wrong today, and tomorrow, I'll spring back in the rankings, right?
Well, right, and it might not even happen in the next update because Google has to crawl enough of the pages on your site to actually see that you made enough of the changes, so it no longer wants to.
Yeah. What is your crawl budget? Go to Webmaster Tools and look and see how deep they're crawling your site, how often they're crawling your site, how far they're going. You literally could. I saw a site this morning that had 40,000 pages in the index, and they had 60,000 404s. That's such a waste of crawl budget that Google's not. Even something like that, literally, we don't know enough about Panda technically that even something like that could be having an effect. Scrapers, other issues like that. You got to look at everything.
Yeah. So what I want to do now, let's just actually talk a little bit about some of the things we do know that aren't good. And David, you mentioned some of this before, but I want to kind of throw a few things out there that I've seen in my experience and just give you define a few things. So far, we've talked about ads in the contextual space, by which I mean too many ads in the midst of what we'll call the body of the article content, if you will. We've talked about thin content, but thin content can actually go in a couple different directions too. In my experience, one is just too many pages with just not much on them, period. The other is the eHow scenario that you mentioned, the thin slicing. So, how to make French.
Just before you roll past that not enough content on the page, I don't want people to get caught up in that. I know certain people with pages and things like that that answer a very simple question. You know what I mean? How many inches in a foot or something like that. Again, it's value add. Is the information valuable, useful, or different, or whatever? I don't want people to start thinking, oh, well, then any page I have with 200 words or less, I should just beef it up and grab some writer and, no.
No, but it might be.
It doesn't refer to length, right?
Does the page serve a purpose and answer? Does it have a value?
Well, it could be 2 sentences on the page is all you need. It's just, no, absolutely. But okay, so then you have thin slicing, which is, let's say you have a site about nursing education, all right, and you have a page nursing school, a page nursing schools, another one nursing colleges, nursing universities, nursing education, best nursing schools, top nursing schools, and they're all addressing exactly the same topic, and you're just there to capture search terms.
And slight variations on them, right?
Very slight variations on search terms that really don't make sense from a user perspective. You wouldn't normally do that in a sensible information architecture, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense. Another scenario is I've seen problems with curated content, where people do a lot of content curation on the site without any particular value-add commentary. So maybe they're cutting a chunk of the text for which the page describes itself.
Well, like look at e-commerce sites that use a common feed.
Yes.
From a manufacturer's, feed, and they stuff that into their cart, and now they've got the same descriptions for the same product as 1,000 other sites.
Right. And there's no value.
At least something you want to look at. Right. There's no value add whatsoever.
Right. And the way I like to, I have a couple of examples I use for this. One of my favorite ones is if you do a search on how to make French toast, and you want to see how many pages have that in the title tag, and you go in title, colon, and then in quotes, how to make French toast. Last I checked, you get 31,500 results, right? And viewers of my show may have heard me say this before, but I haven't eaten French toast in 25 years. I can still tell you how to make it. It's really easy. Google needs 5 pages in response to that query, right?
But whose pages?
Well, got that. I know that they have to choose.
eHow and Yahoo Answers, of course, with a little bit of YouTube in between.
Well, sure, but the point is, if your site is made out of things which are only me too, where there's no practical value add, even if the content was uniquely written, it could still be deemed to be of poor quality because there's nothing that has any juice to it. So those are a few different scenarios.
And Eric, I'll just note we're 35 minutes in here and we're starting to get some questions, so I can bring them up anytime when you're ready.
Yes. No, that'd be great.
Oh no, Eric, you got to go to behavioral first. Me and Bill got to, and
yeah.
Then we'll
Okay.
Go. Then we'll go. You had a theory in the green room, so let's hit it. Then we'll go into the questions.
That sounds good. So then the next question is something like user engagement involved, or measuring user interaction with pages? Could Google be seeing a value in quality based on really poor interaction at some level?
I'll put mine out there as always and let Bill follow with it. My sense with any kind of what they would call user interactions, what is known in the IR world as implicit and explicit user feedback. So explicit user feedback would be like a +1, a like, adding to favorites, sharing, things of that nature. You've taken an active role in showing interest in content. Generally known as spammy and problematic because obviously it's easy to spam and So the implicit stuff, which is your bounce rates, your dwell times, and all that kind of stuff that's behind it, and people, over the years with the analytics, is that a ranking factor, bounce rates, and things like that. I'm still personally dubious, and I've not heard much in the research world that at scale this seems to work. What I would imagine they might use something like that for is to run the Panda and use that as a quality assurance sort of signal, meaning not a ranking factor per se, but look at the implicit feedback. Because even think about click bias, Eric. You know what I mean? The top results always gets 56%, the next one gets 20, and da-da-da. Even you can't even get around click bias when you're trying to establish what those metrics mean. So, to me, I think they might run the Panda and then look at those kind of signals to see if the Q&A was working, as meaning it's not a factor in Panda itself, but they might use it to maybe score it or understand how well it worked. And I'll leave it to
Then it's an indirect factor in the sense that if your speculation is right, where they use it to tune the parameters of the algorithm as opposed to making it a parameter of the algorithm. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value to using user feedback or user behavior as feedback, as a way to gauge whether or not they've picked the right features from the good websites in their seed set and picked the right bad features from bad websites. Because those features should be able to predict how well received pages might be in search results in response to something like a Panda. So if you run Panda on travel websites and nobody clicks on the first 2 pages of search results for travel-related queries, you've maybe done something wrong with your document classifier program that's boosting and promoting sites. The fact that nobody's clicking on any of those in the first 2 pages tells you you've made some type of mistake. That seems to be the best way to use long dwell times, clicks on search results, and so on. This user feedback, and I would guess at this point Google probably collects more user feedback data than they do data about web pages from web crawls. The database of user feedback has to be huge.
Well, the database of everything they have is huge.
Right, but relatively.
No, sure, because they have an enormous amount of things happening every second across the globe, right? So.
Right.
The user feedback is coming in at a much greater rate than the creation of new pages or modification of pages on the web, even as extreme as those things are. The user interaction data is much more voluminous. Right. I had to use that word somewhere in the shell.
Click logs and query logs and so on, and just looking at user sessions. Now that's probably a big part of Hummingbird, because you're getting your semantic relationships from those that helps inform Google about how words within a query, within a long conversational type query, might be related. So a lot of user data may influence something like Hummingbird, but not necessarily Panda as much. I do think that's more of a feedback. How good are our search results? When we show you the top 10.
They become the quality assurance to juxtapose against each decision they make, and how well did it work out? And I thought it was interesting you said in which query space is it? Maybe it's working great in this query space in this one, but not so much over here in these other ones. So how do we tweak it to keep that quality but improve this one? So yeah, for sure. So that's I think that's where behavioral gets used myself. But.
Yeah. All right, Mark, whenever you want, you can start firing questions at us.
All right, here's one from
Oh,
Malhar.
wait, I wasn't ready yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, sorry. And this one I think you're gonna have some fun with because it's an assumption that a lot of people make. And I'm not making fun of the questioner. It says, shouldn't we just adapt to whatever Google says? End of the day, they own search and know better what their followers want. And that sounds like a good solution. Just do what Google says. But what's the problem there, guys?
No problem at all.
Doesn't say.
No, but to me, there's no problem at all. Forget Google. Go back to marketing school and forget SEO because a little SEO is dangerous. This is where people shoot themselves in the foot. They start thinking, well, I'm satisfying this algo and that one, and I got to try and fix it. And then go to, if you really aren't that intimate or your provider isn't, really just don't. And I'm a guy who does SEO, and I'm telling you, don't. Because a little information is dangerous. And that's where people get in trouble. I doubt there's a lot of people out there getting hit by Panda that just went out and built a good site and cared about their users and tried to build traffic through normal marketing channels and so on. I highly doubt Panda's a problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can see Sergey Brin sitting at a computer trying to design the logo for Google and using an open source software to do that because he's never done it before, and they're going to put it up on the website. And talking to Larry Page about how much traffic they're getting to their site and if they should make changes for their users. Google doesn't dictate what they show, their users do. And they're very data driven. And they'll look at the numbers. They'll crunch the numbers. They'll say, maybe we should show local pizzerias within a 3-mile radius instead of a
what do you think, Bill? They're not targeting SEOs. They're actually looking to make their users happy. Whoa. No, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they're targeting SEOs.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a lot of money in taking down SEOs. That's where the money is.
Yeah, so I think it's actually a great question, though, because it has so many subtleties to it, even though it's on the surface a simple question. I mean, so if you were to do what Google wanted you to do, then you would go back to what David just said, which is you would just focus on doing really good things for users because that's actually what they want you to do. On the other side of it, though, in terms of, they actually give very little information beyond.
That's where I was going. Yeah.
Yeah, beyond general statements about about anything specific. And there's a couple reasons for that. They always cite that, hey, if we tell you that this or that is exactly the thing we don't like, then we're arming the spammers with the tools to go do the things that we don't mention we don't like. So that's bad for us, and that's part of what
I like the statements I've seen from Microsoft researchers, though, when it comes to web spam. And they usually say something along the lines of, we're surfacing what we know about web spam and sharing it with other people because we want to make it more expensive. We want to raise the cost of manipulation or attack. We want to make it more expensive to spam than it is to market legitimately.
And that segues nicely, Bill, to what Carmen Rojas asked here. She asked her, is it a matter of time before the other search engines adopt Panda-like methods, or are they already?
Well, I think it's kind of hard to tell.
You stumped us.
What are these other search engines you speak of?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
No, okay, I'll be fair. Because I joke often with people that we are, most of the people I know should be Google optimizers, not search engine. Because anywhere I see a search engine, Amazon, YouTube, anywhere I see Facebook, I see a search engine, I want to figure out what it's doing and how it's working. But there's just different metrics for different places, and I know like behavioral stuff is actually quite big with YouTube. So that's a different kind of search engine, and I think they have different ways of going about surfacing content. So, and I think YouTube's long tried to fight the battle of understanding quality as opposed to anything else, and they use different things because they have, percentage watched is something to look at over there. What, you got a 6-minute video. Did most people watch 30 seconds and leave, which you'd consider a bounce rate in Google's results, but to YouTube it's slightly different. So I think it does happen. I think it is, I think every engineer out there is thinking about it. To what degree, or what how Panda-like it is, I don't know. But
yeah, if we look at it from a market share perspective, right? I mean, I think the ComScore data that we see here in the U.S. is obviously very flawed. The actual market share of Google is north of 80%, and as it is on most of the globe. But YouTube actually has, as you mentioned, has some real search volume, and Bing does have search volume as well. Bing plus Yahoo, really. And we don't really know, as Bill says, what they're using, whether they're using these kinds of algorithms. They don't really talk about it as much.
But I think it brings us back around to what you guys were talking about earlier, that this, Panda specifically is not a penalty. It's not an attack on websites or on SEOs or on SEO in general, any of those things. It's yet another attempt by Google to simply improve its product, to get better results for people out there. And I think you could say in general that anybody running any kind of search engine, if they want to keep it going and staying in business, is probably trying to do that. And whether, we can't say that they're doing the exact same things that Google is doing with Panda, but they're going to have the same concerns, right? They're going to be, wanting to get better results for their users overall.
When Apple talked yesterday about showing off some types of search results straight from their Finder program, or from other aspects of their operating system. They mentioned that they would show those from Bing, and that a lot of the content from those would be knowledge-based type results, like you might see from Wikipedia. Now, Bing a couple years ago was showing PowerSet type annotated Wikipedia results, and I guess a couple of people from PowerSet left Microsoft, and those sort of disappeared, fell by the side. Also know that Microsoft has developed a huge concept-based knowledge base called ProBase, which if you go to the web page they created used to be available for download, it looks like, maybe, but is no longer available for downloading. Don't know if that's been abandoned. We don't know if the PowerSet annotations have been abandoned, but we're going to have to wait to see what Apple starts showing from Bing. See how much like Google's knowledge base they are. See if they're more like the Satori results that we see now in Bing's side panel.
Yep. So
Mark's got one lined up.
Yep. Christian Walderman asks, from a practical standpoint, is there any reliable recommendation to feed the Panda? I think we turn that into, like, again, we've said all along we don't know the exact factors here, but what, from you guys, like, if you had to give one or two takeaways, if you were advising a site owner that wanted to stay on the good side of Panda, what should they be concentrating on?
Again, watch where your ads are. Watch what's above the fold. Watch what text you have. Do you have thin content in the sense of saying the same things over and over at pages that are essentially useless? Look at your site. If you can't look at your site as yourself, get someone you know to, and say, what does this serve a purpose? Does that serve a purpose? If you've got UGC stuff, meaning user-generated content, look at that. That's been a known one we've seen in the past. Are you not monitoring comments? You're not monitoring user-generated things on your site. Watch for that. What else? Duplication, check and see, are you being duplicated? Because, you know, again, if you look at just before it came out, Google rolled out another algorithm, which they talked about, which had to do with essentially duplication. But what duplication actually means in a lot of cases is attribution. Google's always had a big problem with attributing stuff, meaning if someone's got your RSS feed and they're actually publishing it before you and they've got a higher authority site than you, guess what's going to happen? They're literally going to get attribution for your content, so you end up looking like the scraper with your own stuff. So, you know, these are some of the common things we'll look for right away as we're digging in.
Right. Does your website have a large section that includes sponsored content from guests, from partners, from clients, where it's stuff that's been shared all over the web, that has links that aren't no-followed, that go to a lot of the same pages? Are you with the user-generated content, how carefully are you monitoring that? You know, do you have people just cutting and pasting stuff in comments from other places on the web without any care or concern? They want links. You're giving them a place to publish links.
Right, and I think the high-level advice, of course, is to really reapproach the whole problem as if the only thing you were trying to do was make a great site for users. And I know that aggravates a lot of people when that's the kind of response they get, because it's a response that Google will typically give. But when you're looking at all these things, you know, try to get that perspective in. And I really do think it's a good idea to get some people who are willing to tell you to your face that your baby's ugly, to look at your site and help with that evaluation of it, because you might not realize you'll find yourself doing things. You'll be looking at your pages and you'll say, well, I think that's a reasonable number of ads, or well, I think this content has value. Here's a classic argument. Yes, I understand I'm talking about all the same things that other people have already talked about, but I organize it better. So that's my value add. Well, guess what? That's not your value add. Google doesn't give a good whatever about that.
The working plan is aggregating content that's related in some manner. Maybe not very well,
right,
but it's the same topic. So you've published millions of pages that are, here's the topic and jobs related to it. Here's the topic and user ratings related to it. Here's a directory of every place this type of business can be found in the United States. And multiple, you may be a great programmer. You may be able to pull this stuff in and aggregate it from around the web, but that doesn't mean you have a business model. It doesn't mean that the content that you're copying and scraping and pulling together is something that Google wants to show in search results.
Right. Absolutely true. So
lightning round, go Mark. Lightning round, man, come on.
The Scott Scowcroft, as David, you were just talking about duplicate content a moment ago. He says he has some specifics here in videos in particular. He says, "Am I penalized for duplicating my video on multiple channels, and/or duplicating my YouTube description for these videos?" So he's got a YouTube video and he puts it on other channels. Uses the same description. It's just going to get him in some trouble.
Yeah, but again, I'm not so sure Panda's running over its own properties like YouTube. Again, in a situation like that, from a YouTube perspective, it's just going to, it'll surface the video that it thinks is the most valuable result for that. Meaning, through percentages watched, through the entity itself, how many subscribers to that channel, how many likes, how many comments, and things of that nature. Are you putting that same video on your site on 5 different pages? Then maybe it's a Panda issue, but on YouTube itself, I don't think so.
Right, and if it's on YouTube and then in the social channels, these social things aren't going to be in that equation. It's really about web pages for the most part.
Yeah, I asked, I had an opportunity to ask John Mueller in a Webmaster Hangout about a year ago or so about duplicate content with Google Plus in particular. If you take a piece of web content and repost it.
That becomes the attribution thing where you screw yourself by your Plus page outranking your home page, your blog page.
Which I'll talk about in a moment because that can happen. But in general, he said that's not a concern. He said that we understand that Google Plus is a social network. It's not. We don't treat it exactly the same, and people are going to put all kinds of things up there. And it's not. But where we do see it, as you just mentioned, like particularly if you have a high authority profile, that content can end up ranking higher than your own blog page. Although when I've had that happen to me. I think it's actually kind of a good news for me because when I've seen it happen, typically for a particular keyword, the Google Plus post and my blog post will be ranking on the first page.
Yeah, I've seen it even happen with Facebook. People that would as soon as they publish a blog post, throw it up on their Facebook account. Problem is Facebook's got a much higher crawl rate, so Google was finding it over there before they found it on the person's site, and they'd put it verbatim. So guess what? The Facebook post started ranking.
Yeah, so now, what I find, though, is when that happens is that typically the Google Plus post will drop off after a while. Not in every case, but in most cases, and the blog post will remain. So, for me, it's been actually, I think, a good thing because I'm capturing for at least a short period of time. I've got, more of those first 10 results that are linked to me, and in the long run, the blog post, especially if it starts getting some links and things like that, will have more shelf life with Google than the Google Plus post.
Cool. So one thing I just wanted to throw into the conversation, but you know what, we're kind of at the end of the show, so maybe we should just let everybody make some closing comments, and I'll just add my bit in the closing comment. Bill, do you have any final thoughts you want to add for people?
Sure. Let me.
Bill's looking up his closing thoughts on Google.
Yeah, I know. It's like he's got it written down somewhere. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, I didn't write anything up. Come on, nobody told me about that.
Let's see if anybody out there has any good thoughts on this I can use.
So I mentioned that there is a patent from Navneet Panda that describes some aspects of re-ranking search results based on quality of those results, and it measures quality a couple different ways. I suspect that there are probably other patents from him too that add more information. Google doesn't control the speed at which patents get published by the patent office. So sometimes it takes a long time for them to get published. The patent for the Google directory, which sorted results in DMOZ by PageRank, took 12 years to be granted. And it was granted a year or so after Google discontinued the Google directory. So we may see something, we may not see something in terms of patents that describe more about Panda. We've actually gotten a lot of information in things like the Wired interview and other places about Panda. The upgrade's been a lot more transparent in terms of information Google's shared. Unfortunately, most people who've been affected by Panda and had their traffic affected probably won't say that. They'll probably say we need more. But I think it's tough. It's tough being in that situation where you have been impacted by an update like this and you're not sure what to do. You spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and possibly a lot of money trying to remedy. But you know, a lot of cases, sites I've seen that have been impacted, some of the things they've been doing, it should have been obvious that there were things that Google wouldn't like. And I think a lot of times you really need to start with a full site audit to get a sense of what's going on with your website, because a Panda update, a Penguin update may not be the only things that are causing harm to your traffic. You get a sense of those first.
Yeah. So I'll just echo right on top of Bill, as I always do over the years. It's my job, follow him around, echo, echo, echo. Again, I'll go back to a little SEO knowledge is dangerous. I have literally, I can hear the minions of SEO people calling me a Google fanboy right now, but you can go back to that post by Singal, which I'll post in here, and look at some of the things he says, that 20 or odd points. If you can get your hands on a copy of the Google Radar document. Literally, it's miles long, but go through and read it. At the end of the day, the reason I think Bill and I do what we do with patents and papers and things is we're trying to put our heads into the mindset of the engineer. You know what I mean? We're not trying to read between the lines of Matt Cutt's latest video. We're not trying to do any of that. And so, and a lot of that is, again, goes back to the user. Are you doing things that are good to the user? And to intimate further to what Bill said about the audit stuff, have you been following the latest marketing trends for the last 6 years? Oh, we're going to try UGC. We're going to try inbound marketing. We're going to try content marketing. And have you gotten so crazy with your site that maybe you've left little pieces lying around that might be at risk? And part of an audit process, we do a risk assessment, meaning is there potential for risk? Again, I looked at a site this morning with 30,000 pages indexed with 40,000 404s. Well, what is Google's crawlers going to make of all those 404s? Is that a possible potential risk? If you're not intimate enough with this kind of stuff, maybe you might want to, or hire someone, or whatever. But be careful. You might actually be better off just thinking about your users and not Google all the time to avoid these things in the future. Because a lot of times, like Bill's saying, you pull back that timeline, you'll see Penguin hits and Panda hits, and maybe there was a thing called the Goopla page layout algorithm, which is kind of related to Panda. It breaks up a page and looks at it in different senses and forms. You can often be trying to do the latest thing so much with not enough knowledge that you've tripped over something even though you think you've been doing the right thing.
Yeah. Mark?
Well, I'm here mostly to learn. You guys take a deeper dive into this most as anybody else. That's why I was managing the questions. But I was really encouraged by this whole discussion. It's one that I'm going to feel proud to share with people in the future because I think it was so down to earth and common sense. There's a lot of hysteria that comes out there that leads to wild speculations, and I particularly like Dave's calm words on this. Don't oversteer the ship. That can be just as dangerous as doing nothing. I think that's going to be my main takeaway from this that I'm going to be talking to people about in the future. Is do the things that are going to build value for your users. I love what David said earlier again about he seriously doubts that anybody whose main and primary focus and passion and what they've been working hard at is serving their audience, serving their users with the best possible information, the best possible site that's going to meet their needs and do what they're going to do, really has a lot to worry about from something like Panda. So that's reassuring to hear. Along with it, don't oversteer the ship.
Yeah. So a couple things that I want to mention. One is that first of all, I think reviewing the patents to get in the mindset of the engineers is an awesome thing to do, and I do some of that myself for the same reasons. They're very useful for those of us who are in the geekier side and into SEO. And don't do a little SEO, but we do a lot of SEO, so to speak. But you just also, if you read about a patent somewhere, just know that reading about a patent doesn't mean that an algorithm has been implemented using that patent. There's lots of things get patented that never get used. And even
if it did get used, since the time it was filed in 2008 to now, what does it look like? Probably nothing like it.
Yeah, it's completely different, right? So it was a concept, and who knows where it is today. So Bill's example of the re-ranking DMOZ results was an interesting one. But the other thing I want to leave people with is, if you've been hit by Panda, It's a ranking factor. It's not a penalty, but doesn't change the fact that you have probably some type of structural problem with your website or maybe even your business model. And this is one of the things that I find a lot of times when I'm trying to help people deal with Panda issues, when we're doing that here at Stone Temple Consulting, is you have people on, and I've literally had conversations with people and I've said, guys, you don't get it. Your business is under assault. Everything you've worked and hoped and dreamed for is in the process of being taken away from you because of the way you're approaching it. You can't, like, oh, let's try this little tweak and that little tweak. You have to be prepared to go in there and do some fairly serious surgery. And if you're lucky, it's a section of your site. If you're unlucky, or you've gone down the wrong path in how you approach your business, you may be throwing your site out or redoing it in some very fundamental way. You may be changing your business model. And this is what happens with Panda. It hits across all these broad spectrums. If you've got to be prepared to deal with that level of impact. That's the not so cheery expression, Mark. Sorry, I threw a down note after your up note. We should have gone in the other order. But anyway, that's just my take the lesson and be prepared to dive in and go at it. If you do the right things, you do have a really good chance of turning it around, and then be patient. So with that, that's it for the Digital Marketing Answers show with me in California this time. So thanks everybody for watching. And our next show, Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, the Digital Marketing Excellence Show. I have Lee Auden on with me, and we're talking about all kinds of things. Content marketing, SEO, social media, integrated marketing, PR, a whole wide range of things. It's going to be a fantastic show. I'm thrilled to have Lee joining us. Bill, David, Mark, thanks a ton. Had great fun.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
Always
thanks,
a pleasure. Always a pleasure.